This is Generations. Kevin Swanson with you. And Congressman Thomas Massie lost his primary over there in Kentucky by 10 points, thanks to the campaigning for the other guy on the part of the President of the United States and his Secretary of War. Massie was the worm in the president's gourd. That's no question about that. Briefly, here are Massie's chief sins. One, he opposed the war along with only one other Republican congressman. He opposed the big, beautiful bill that drove America into more debt back last year, along with only one other Republican congressman actually opposed the big, beautiful bill. He also pushed for transparency on the whole Epstein file deal. Well, Massie had a 100% rating on the New American Freedom Index, a rating shared by only 9 other congressmen. BTW, the U.S. Office of Budget and Management, is estimating a national deficit of $2 trillion for this fiscal year. That's up 15% from the fiscal year 2025, which was the last year for which the Biden administration was responsible, meaning that Trump is a bigger spender than Biden. Yet again, the Republicans have proven their points. Well, there are only 2 rebels who have consistently opposed the Trump agenda, a big spending, big war mongering, and can't we just ignore the big moral thing contained in the Epstein files on the Republican side? Only 2. They're Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. Okay, those are the 2. Now, I guess good conservative Christians aren't supposed to like Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. I mean, Trump is saving America from Venezuela and Iran and all that. He's saving America from Mexicans. And Massie just falls into the hands of the Democrats. Okay, so that's the explanation. Meanwhile, nobody, and I mean nobody in politics is talking about the fact that we are killing 65% of viable babies conceived in this country in any given year. 17 million murders per year. Never mind that. And never mind the fact that men who are confessed and professed adulterers and homosexuals are elected or appointed to the highest positions in the land. Never mind all of that. The silence is deafening on all this. The country is now under the judgment of God, and most of these political debates are just totally irrelevant. Okay, I'm just saying it. But now, what about Ken Paxton? So the other big news is that this guy, Texas AG Ken Paxton, took the Republican primary in Texas this week by 25 points. Wow. Thanks mostly to the MAGA push on the part of the President of the United States. Now, Paxton will face a man by the name of James Tallarico in the general election. Tallarico and Paxton are 2 different sorts of good Christian people, you know. On the one hand, you've got the Republican, the publican all over again, Ken Paxton. Then on the other hand, the Democrat, James Tallarico. And I'm going to repeat some things that I've said before, and here it goes. James Tallarico wears his Christianity on his sleeve. He's good on Jesus. He loves the Sermon on the Mount. Not so much Matthew 5:19, but some of the rest of the Sermon on the Mount, the part that he agrees with. He's good with the Good Samaritan, but he's not quite as hot on Matthew 15:4. He's not a big John 14:6 guy, or Mark 9:48 for that matter. And there's no way James is going to go for 1 Corinthians 6:9 or Leviticus 20:13. Okay. But then again, neither do most evangelicals. Well, Ken Paxton, on the other hand, would be uncomfortable with Leviticus 20:10, 3 verses just prior to Leviticus 20:13, for I think obvious reasons. By the way, you're going to have to look up some of these Bible verses if you haven't had it all memorized by now. Associated Press has reported that Ken Paxton had the affair with a woman who worked for a local developer by the name of Nate Paul, whose relationship with one of Texas's most powerful figures was central to his impeachment trial in 2023. The Texas Tribune covered the questioning at the impeachment trial. So Paxton's attorney, Tody Buxby, questioned Paxton's office manager on the witness stand, where Paxton had confessed to this affair with a Mrs. Olson in September of 2018. But some months later, the office manager said Paxton told her the affair was continuing and that he, quote, still loved Mrs. Olson and that he wanted his chief of staff to be more accommodating of it. Well, then the attorney cross-examining Paxton's chief of staff quoted the Bible at that point. All have sinned and fallen short of the grace of God, right? Sometimes people make stupid mistakes, right? Then he asked the critical question, just because somebody has an affair, just because somebody commits adultery doesn't mean that they're a, quote, criminal, does it? Well, yeah, let's just not paying attention to Leviticus 20:10. That's the whole point here. And Paxton's attorney made the comment, this is Tony Buxby, he said, imagine if we impeached everyone in Austin who had an affair. We'd be impeaching people for the next 100 years. It's no big deal. Okay, it's a capital crime in God's Old Testament law, but I mean, come on. It's no big deal, guys. Or is it? Paxton's wife just divorced him on biblical grounds last summer. This comes after reports of yet another alleged affair with a married woman, a 57-year-old author and mother of 7, a big Christian influencer, which included overseas junts together without their spouse's knowledge back in 2024. Now, you got to understand, Ken Paxton's a good conservative. I mean, he's among the very best. He defended the Texas trigger law that bans most abortions once Roe was overturned a few years ago. He's warned that abortion providers could face civil and criminal penalties under Texas law. He's launched legal challenges to federal policies allowing mail distribution of abortion pills. And he's investigated organizations accused of sending abortion drugs into Texas. He's for states' rights, opposes federal tyranny, advocates for religious liberty. He argued that county clerks with religious objections should not be forced to have same-sex marriage licenses after Obergefell came down the pike. A Michael Emerson, director of the Religion and Public Policy program at Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy, put it this way, quote, since Trump, there seems to be ways for some people to maneuver around infidelity allegations. To explain it away, to say what I do personally and what I actually fight for and advocate for are different things. And here also, the former chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, Matt Rinaldi, endorsed Paxton over the other Republican Cornyn in the race. Here's what Rinaldi said. I'm a Catholic and I don't believe in divorce, but I think the political climate we're in right now is one where Christians, conservatives, believe they're in the existential battle for their country. And I think in this battle, they're choosing the candidates time and time again that will help them win this fight for the values of America. Come on, guys, we're saving our country, saving America here. Personal morality, forget it. Now, there's a lesson to learn here in this tale of two Texans. If you live in Texas, I guess the obvious question is, who are you going to vote for in the upcoming election of these two good Christian fellows, Paxton or Tallarico? Do you vote for the guy who should stand trial for a death penalty crime, or the other guy who rejects all biblical law relating to adultery, homosexuality, and abortion? American politics has turned into a dumpster fire. That's really where we're at right now. Tallarico's a card-carrying Presbyterian seminary guy, and Ken Paxton is apparently a member in good standing down at Prestonwood Baptist Church in Plano, Texas, as of the last report. It's all good here. Now, I'm not riding the slippery slope. I use a standard, and I'm sticking with Exodus 18:20 for God's requirements on the magistrate. And this is the key. You go into that election, and you vote according to Exodus 18:20. You got to have a standard. At some point, you got to draw a line in the sand, say, thus far, no further. Here's the standard. You shall select from all the people able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place such over them to be rulers of thousands, hundreds, fifties, tens, and let them judge the people at all times. In the long run, I think you're going to find out that you're going to do better with men who fear God, men of truth, men who hate covetousness. That's the best solution. The predominant line at this point is this: personal morality doesn't matter. We're throwing that overboard. Don't have time for it. Too much weight. Can't deal with personal morality. We just got to save the republic here. We're in an existential battle for the country, guys. It doesn't matter anymore. It didn't matter for the Democrats in the 1960s with Kennedy and the 1990s with Clinton, and it sure doesn't matter anymore for the Republicans in the 2020s. The message is clear. Forget the moral foundations of the nation. They're cracked beyond repair. We just need to duct tape the facades back on and pretend we have a healthy republic here. The message is clear. Forget the fact that the family is messed up beyond all recognition. Who cares about the family? We've got to save the nation here, whatever that is. And forget the faith. We're battling for the remnants of Christendom here, whatever that is. Forget God's law. We're battling for ethnic purity. Forget ethical purity. We're trying to get some ethnic purity in here. Forget morality. We need to save the republic. Forget the fact we're enslaved in sin. Let's fight for freedom from Rome. I know this is extremely unpopular with conservatives these days, as it was really unpopular with the conservative party, the Pharisees, back in Jesus' day. I mean, you get stoned for saying things like this. Jesus was almost stoned. They were going for the stones after this one. That's right. The conservatives are going to stone you for this. They will come and they would stone me for this. Because the Pharisees said, hey, We've never been in bondage to anyone. How can you say you will be made free? And Jesus says in John 8, most assuredly I say to you, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. And this is for Ken Paxton. A slave does not abide in the house forever, but a son abides forever. Therefore, Ken, if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. So let's not equate the kingdom of God to Rome or to America for anything like that. Rome falls, America falls, but the kingdom of God's going to do just fine. Thank you very much. Today, Bill Jack with me on this one. Bill, this is a big deal for Texans. I mean, we're obviously not in Texas. Well, arguably North Texas. Colorado is North Texas, but we've seceded from Texas. But this is a massive question for Texas residents. I'm talking about Christians living in Texas. I have friends in Texas. In fact, I'm kind of curious what they're doing with this.
I prefer to say Texas is South Colorado.
Okay, that's fine. But would you vote for Ken Paxton? It's a viable question for any genuine Christian. I don't think any genuine Christian is going to vote for Tallarico, despite the fact, he's this wonderful, Jesus-loving, Sermon on the Mount liberal who wants to kill babies. Okay, so
wants to kill babies because he says the Bible is silent about abortion.
Yeah. So that's Tallarico on the one side, but then you've got Ken Paxton with he's confessed to his adulteries. Maybe not his most recent one yet. We'll wait for that confession. His pastor over at Prestonwood Baptist Church, Jack Graham, joined the Faith Advisory Council for the opponent, Cornyn, in the primaries. I don't know exactly what Cornyn or Jack Graham is going to do at this point. I don't know what Cornyn's going to do at this point. He's going to vote for his opponent in the election coming up in November. I don't really know. Nevertheless, what you going to do? What would you do if you lived in Texas?
Well, I don't care about Texas.
Because you live in Colorado?
I live in Colorado.
Okay, right. We'll get to that in a moment.
In the last round of elections here, we had a candidate, Joe O'Dea, who ran on the Republican ticket for Senate, U.S. Senate, but he was adamantly pro-abortion. I could not vote for him. Mm-hmm. I voted down ballot. Mm-hmm. And people say, well, we just need to get a Republican in there. There are times when you hold your nose and you vote, okay? But there are certain principles that are, for each person, okay, that are non-negotiable, okay? And the position on life for me is non-negotiable. Mm-hmm. But here's the problem, Kevin. Here's the problem. Go. We expect our elected officials to be saint-like.
In the campaign.
No. We expect our elected officials to be saint-like.
Okay, once they're in office.
But we hate it. Mm-hmm. We despise it. We will criticize when a candidate comes across saint-like.
What? There's a disconnect there.
There is a disconnect.
Okay. So
we don't want
the Americans. You're talking about Americans.
Well, I'm talking about America. I'm talking about Christians. Okay. We don't want our candidates to be idealistic, but we expect our elected officials to be idealistic.
Why is that? Okay. So why are they going for Paxton in the primary? You think it's because he's flawed? You really think it's because he's flawed?
Right.
But
I don't think it's because
as he gets into office, he's going to become...
They're willing to overlook the flaws because we got to get a Republican in there, and he's the strongest one, and he's backed by Trump. Mm-hmm. But once he's in there...
He better be a good boy.
Now, you and I agree that the standard for a magistrate, the yardstick to judge a magistrate, is found in Exodus 18.
Yeah,
right.
Fear God, hate covetousness,
don't take bribes, love the truth, and we should hold every person to that, not just our elected officials, but pastors and people in the pew.
So you got to make a judgment call as to whether Ken Paxton fears God. And different voters are going to take different positions on that. Now, my guess is 99.9% of the voters in Texas aren't thinking, oh, I heard this on Generations. I need to be sure that the elected officials fear God. Fearing God is kind of like the last thing on the list.
This is a case study, and it's a general principle. You're using a specific as an illustration of a general principle.
Absolutely.
We're not starting with the specific and trying to extract a general principle. We're starting here and saying, okay, why is it that we really despise candidates who are adamantly pro-life, who are adamantly unwilling to compromise on basic principles? But once they get into office, we expect our elected officials to be the saints. I was in the gym yesterday, and I met a guy who was he claimed to be a Christian. He had said, I voted for Trump 3 times, but I am done with him because he's compromised on the Epstein files. He's compromised on getting us into a war. And he worked against Massey in Kentucky.
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said, I agree.
So he's done with Trump.
Yeah, he's done, and he's done with the Republican Party.
Oh, really? Where's he going to go?
Okay. So he's dropping out. So I said, look, I can't do anything about Trump. I can't do anything about Massey. It's Kentucky. I'm in Colorado. I said, who are you going to vote for in the primary for governor for the Republican candidate? Right. And he said, I don't know who's running.
That's a problem. That's a problem. He's abandoning the local races.
All politics is
local.
Where
it starts.
And we need to get off the bench and get in the game. And we can then say, okay, I will back this flawed candidate, and I will support and hold this elected official. I will hold his feet to the fire by doing as much as I can to call him to righteousness, to call him to have integrity, to be honest, to hold to the principles of the Republican Party. But don't do what this guy yesterday did and carp about those in other states and not be involved in the very state in which you live in a local race.
Well, you know I'm about done with Washington. I'm about done with Washington. I think for a number of reasons. One is because there's not a whole lot I can do about it.
Exactly.
Secondly, you're right. Politics starts locally, and as much as we invest the local offices, as much as we commit to local offices.
What's the most important one?
I think we as Christians are engaging a decentralized view and a decentralized institutionalization of politics, which is really where we need to go. We can't be centralizing power.
We tend to look for a messiah.
We do. Right. Exactly.
Okay? And I'm saying we hate it when there is somebody who has integrity as a candidate.
Yeah.
We say, oh, he's too rigid. He's too rigid on this issue. But once they're elected, we expect them to be messiah figures. And you're exactly correct. We've got to drill down as Christians on what we can influence and how we can be salt and light in all areas. What do you consider to be the most important race locally?
The county sheriff.
And why is that?
Sheriff.
Why is that?
Well, at least in the United States, because he wields a fair amount of power, and you know what? He basically enforces law in my backyard, where that will affect me and my family. If there are issues related to parental rights, chances are the county sheriff is going to have a take on that, and either my parental rights will be protected by the county sheriff or not. It depends on the county sheriff.
He's the last line. The sheriff is the last line of defense constitutionally on our liberties.
Yep.
Okay, the county sheriff, for example, when the federal agents come in and say, hey, I want to interview Kevin, the county sheriff should say, well, you don't have jurisdiction.
Excuse me very much, but I'm going to take this first.
Okay, I will inform Kevin that you would like to have a conversation, and if he chooses, he can meet with you in my office, but I will be present.
Yeah.
Now, that is a sheriff who understands his constitutional duties because he is accountable to we the people. He's elected. He's not appointed.
Oh yeah.
The state patrol, they work at the
city police chiefs. They get appointed by the mayor.
State patrol work for the governor.
Yep.
The city police work for the mayor.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Who works for the people?
The sheriff.
The sheriff
Makes a big difference.
And we don't think in those terms of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
We want to carp about what's happening in Kentucky. We want to complain about what's happening in Washington, but then we are woefully, willfully ignorant of what's happening in our own city, our own county. And that's inexcusable.
4 years ago, I made spaghetti. I made a spaghetti dinner for you.
Yes, you did. Yes.
How was it? How was the spaghetti dinner?
Excellent.
I threw a little sauce in it. I had a little bit of a Southwestern.
The sauce ended up in my campaign fund because people were extremely generous.
That's right. I raised money for your campaign.
And it wasn't even in my county that you did this.
That's right. But there was one other person there.
Yes.
Remember who he was?
And it was the candidate for sheriff in your county.
And we raised money for him.
Yes.
We bundled the money. We sent it down to him. And we got to thank you very much. And we got 4 more years from that guy.
And that's exactly what churches need to be doing. They need to be saying, okay, we will host a forum where the candidates can come to have our congregants informed so that they can make intelligent biblical decisions about their vote. Every candidate is flawed. That's why I'm sitting at a table with my feet under the table, because I have feet of clay. That's why I wear shoes, because I have feet of clay. I don't want people to see my feet of clay.
And you certainly don't want people stomping on them.
That's right, because everybody's flawed. We demand, once they're elected, to be pure and have integrity, but we sure don't want that when they run as candidates.
But there certainly is something of a critical mass that we need. I mean, granted, not everybody's perfect. And yes, you're going to vote for sinners any way you look at it. But hopefully you're still voting for somebody who fears God.
Yes.
Which means at the very least, when they have sinned, they're willing to be transparent, open up, and confess it. And say, as David did, have mercy upon me, O God, according to the multitude of your tender mercies, blot out my transgressions.
For the Christian, that should be the number one question asked of a candidate.
Do you fear God?
Do you fear God? And the second question should be, what is the role of government? If they answer those two biblically,
you're on track.
Then they're on track, and I can get behind them. Now, will I agree with every position on every policy? Of course not. Will I applaud every vote they take? Of course not. Because I too am flawed. But we have to educate our congregants as to what a biblical perspective is on government, and constitutionally what a perspective is on the role of government, before we just allow them to check out, like this guy at the gym, or merely complain and not get off the bench and get involved.
I'd like your comment, Bill, on this left-wing Baptist press on the Tallarico race with the Paxton group. The list of Paxton's transgressions is as long as a gang member's rap sheet. He would have been removed from office in Texas except for the interference of Donald Trump, who pressured Texas senators not to convict Paxton after he was impeached by his Republican peers in the State House of Representatives. Tallarico, in contrast, is described by the leftist Baptist press here as squeaky, clean Presbyterian pastor who exhibits the best of the social gospel and left-leaning politics. Imagine the Baptist press endorsing a Presbyterian. That was interesting. That's interesting.
That's ironic.
That's interesting, yeah. So the left-wing Christian Baptist press asked the question, won't it be ironic if Trump's red wall breaks first in Texas because he couldn't help but endorse the candidate most like himself? Is that an ouch? Is that an ouch?
It is.
Is there an ouch there?
There is a dig there.
There's a dig there. There's an ouch.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
Again, what we have to understand is we tend to pull a thread in the tapestry and say, look at this thread. Look how loose this thread is. Instead of stepping back and looking at the complete tapestry and saying, oh, that depicts something that's not holy and right. We tend to pull the thread and think, okay, yeah, it's going to unravel the entire tapestry. Again, every person is flawed, but when it comes to biblical principles, if they are not a Christian, but they still tip the hat at it, like some of our founders, they thought more biblically than most Christians do today because of the worldview in which they were They existed. It's
and they
the
most
zeitgeist.
definitely feared God. They feared
Yes.
God. Every one of them would say they feared God.
Yes.
Everyone.
Right.
They were God-fearing men.
Right.
That was a line that used to be used.
Right.
When was the last time you heard, now that's a God-fearing man?
Yeah.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Even, I would say in the 1940s, 1950s, there was still some kind of respect for a God-fearing man.
Yes.
But those have been gone. It's not, you don't find them in churches anymore.
Well, Aaron Wren, I think, did an article in which he said that up until 1990, I believe it was, 1995, Christianity was viewed as a positive in the culture, even by non-Christians, that it had a positive effect. And then it became neutral until about 2012. And then people said, you can believe whatever you want to believe. And that was the era of the mega churches, right?
Yeah.
And then after 2012 to 2015, when you had the Obergefell decision in the works and finally coming down, now Christianity is considered to be a negative. The culture looks at Christians in a negative light.
Yeah. There is no fear of God before their eyes.
Right.
Wow. And by the way, there are always two ditches. If you can only see one ditch over there, you're probably in the other one. And that's the way it looks. It's tough when the election always seems to come down to choosing between Stalin and Hitler. It just gets tough on us.
And
But
that's
wow.
why. And why is that? Why is that the case?
Because there's no fear of God before their eyes.
Because Christians have checked out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I said in the churches, there's no fear of God before their eyes. In the churches. That's what I said. And I know it's hard, but this pretty much describes the world of Republicans, Democrats, Christians, liberals, and conservatives today. You know, when I bring up Proverbs 1:7 in homeschooling conferences around America, and I've done that 4 or 5 times the last few months, I usually get at least one, sometimes 2 amens. And that, my friends, wraps up this edition of the Generations broadcast. Encourage you to, coming back to the beginning of all wisdom and knowledge, which is the fear of God. I encourage you to my book, Keep the Faith on Education, and another book called Upgrade, the 10 Secrets to the Best Education for Your Child, which gets back to the basics. And honestly, if we're not bringing this into a homeschool, if we don't bring this into the family, we'll never see it in Washington. That's why you got to get a copy of Upgrade. And by the way, give your kids an education grounded in the fear of God. And maybe, just maybe, someday we might get 10 amens. This is Kevin Swanson inviting you back again next time as we continue to lay down a vision for the next generation. This has been a production of the Generations Media Network. For more information, go to generations.org/media.